egg cracks open, there is a dinosaur that hatches out of it, which takes a whole and I absolutely love it. Someone else entered Adam's life in 1970 who would become another big part of his day that he was crafting for interviews from that point forward. He adopted a dog, a mutt who he named Alice B. Kerr. She was allegedly named after Alice B. Toklas. His story went that he had gone to the pound several times to visit the dog, and then he took a friend with him to see her, and while the two men were there, the attendant told him, "I'll tell you one thing about that dog, it does children." Adams immediately answered, "I'll take it." He would follow up the story by saying that Alice would never go for the jugular, but would keep children in their place. Yeah, apparently that story of the visit to the pound with his friend was like, this dog is clearly in love with you. Like, the dog just ran up and was, like, happy and wanted to be held by him. And he's like, why don't you take this dog? He's like, I don't know. Until the attendant said, this doesn't like kids. He's like, this is my dog. Alice became nearly his constant companion at that point. Her bad behavior was tolerated by friends who spoiled her, and she absolutely adored Adams. He brought Alice everywhere with him, even in his cars when he was racing as part of his hobby. And when he traveled and left her with friends, he would write Alice postcards and apparently call and literally be that person that's like, put my dog on the phone. He once told the press, it's just me and Alice against other people had been in those discussions. But this ended up not being a full revival. It was a reunion show for Halloween 1977. And it did come to fruition, but it did not do well. But it did make Adams about $30,000, and he was also starting to make a lot of money through gallery showings, an element of his business that his ex-wife had no control over, so he was getting all of the proceeds instead of 50% on those gallery sales. We'll get to the last years of his life after another quick sponsor break. Hey listeners, I wanted to share a new podcast with you. It is called U-Turns, and it is from How Stuff Works, hosted by Lisa Oz and Jill Fursig. People say change is hard. We've all heard it all the time, but could we actually make it feel good? What's the first move to make when you don't know where exactly you're headed from where you are now? How do you switch directions without feeling completely lost? Lisa and Jill dig into all of this in their new podcast, U-Turns, that is Y-O-U-Turns, on Wednesdays, and you can join them as they navigate their own life changes, and they talk about exploration and experimentation and transformation, whether you're switching careers, relocating, or just having another big change in your life. U-Turns has the answer, and they're going to get honest, and they're going to talk and laugh about the stuff that everybody goes through. For more insights, Lisa and Jill go deep with some of the world's smartest people who have done these life changes. For example, Sally Krawcheck navigated all kinds of change in her life, getting fired, discovering that her husband had been unfaithful, leaving her marriage, starting a risky new business, and now she is one of the most successful women on Wall Street. Every week, U-Turns will bring you guests like these, sharing their powerful and proven advice, as well as stories of change from their own lives. So tune in to get perspective on your crazy U-turns and get comfortable being uncomfortable, maybe even enjoy the wild ride. Because of the reputation for dark humor that Adams had developed, sometimes there were instances where people interpreted his work in completely unintended ways. One of those happened in 1978, when a Thanksgiving cover that Adams drew for The New Yorker caused a bit of confusion. The image features a turkey farmer standing on the porch of his farmhouse, and the turkeys in the wide barnyard have formed up into military-style regiments, presumably with intent to rebel against their holiday fate. But some readers took this as a commentary on Nazi Germany, because the barnyard representation was to them a little too reminiscent of concentration camps. There's also a lot of brown, which I don't know if there's like a subconscious brown shirt association going on. I don't know what the deal is, but a lot of people thought that was what it was, and he was like, no, it's just turkeys.
Also on May 31st, 1980, Charlie and T got married in the pet cemetery at her home. Their dogs, including Alice, were attendants at the ceremony. T's college-age son was Charlie's best man, and T wore a dress made out of black velvet. Joseph Heller and Cheryl Teagues were among the guests, although a lot of the guests did not know they were going to a wedding. They thought they were just going to a party to celebrate a recent honor of Charlie's, which is an honorary PhD.
Yeah, he had finally realized, like, hey, it would actually be probably pretty beneficial for T to be able to handle my legal affairs because my health isn't really getting any better. He had another ulcer situation and some other problems arise. And also, he kind of realized it was going to make her probably happy. So he just finally was like, oh, let's do it. And they did it very quickly. But the couple still lived the exact same lives that they had before the wedding. Charlie lived at T's house on Long Island on the weekends, and then in his apartment in Manhattan during the week. But they both seemed really, really happy in this new marriage. They traveled together, they enjoyed each other's company, and T never expected Charlie to be anything but discreet about his extramarital activities.
Even in his later life, his work really continued to delight people. He tried to stay away from topical or trendy topics, but he did mock health food and modern marriage on occasion. When he was interviewed for a piece in the Washington Post in 1982, the article referred to him as the house haunt of the New Yorker.
In the late 1980s, Charlie had another ulcer scare as well as a carotid artery surgery. His eyesight also really started to decline. He had to give up even wine. As you recall, he had given up heavier spirits before then. And he started to socialize less. One of the things was that if he couldn't go to a party and have a drink of any kind, he just didn't want to be around a bunch of drunk people. And T noted that after his carotid artery surgery, he really came out a much changed man. The normally jolly Charlie had started to have grumpier days. He was still fun, but he was slowing down, and he stopped keeping the notes that he had always copiously written in his date book.
His dog Alice died in June of 1987, and she had been his companion for 17 years. He didn't talk about it much, but he kept her inscribed food dish after that as a treasured item. This left his time in Manhattan feeling a little lonely. He wanted T to come into the city with him during the week sometimes, but she insisted on staying at the place that they moved to in Sagaponack, New York, which they nicknamed the Swamp.
And although he spent less and less time at his office at the New Yorker, when he was there, he was very open and willing when young cartoonists came to talk to him or just get advice.
On Thursday, September 29th of 1988, Charlie had a heart attack while sitting behind the wheel of his parked car just outside his New York apartment. He was taken to the emergency room immediately after he was found, and he was pronounced dead. He was 76. Later, in an interview with the New York Times, T, who shared his sense of humor, said he's always been a car buff, so it was a nice way to go.
And he was remembered by friends as a charming man and a great friend and a really good listener. And what was really interesting is that despite his womanizing we've been talking about throughout these two episodes, most of the women in his life described him above all as their great, great friend, one of the few men in their lives who was willing to listen and talk with them in a way that was not a constant effort at seduction.
Everyone from Lauren Bacall to Kurt Vonnegut to Burgess Meredith mourned Adams either in person at the services or in letters to his widow T. Charlie's ashes were interred at the Swamp in the Pet Cemetery, which T. Adams had transplanted when they moved there. T kept the location of Charlie's ashes secret for fear of fans showing up, and then when she died 14 years later, her ashes were laid to rest next to his.
Lee Lorenz, the New Yorker's cartoon editor in the early 1980s, once described how very surprisingly normal Charlie was to a reporter. He said, quote, "He's an urbane, relaxed, congenial man of great civility. He doesn't eat babies."
A mural on canvas that Charlie painted in 1952 for over a Hamptons hotel has been quietly on display at the Pennsylvania State University Library since 2000. It was donated by an alumnus who owned the hotel at one time, but it's been sort of tucked away in this out-of-the-way area, not particularly noticed. It depicts the family of Gomez, Morticia, Uncle Fester, Lurch, Grandma Frump, and the children at the beach. Gomez is fishing and seems to have caught something. Fester is at the ready with a net, and then panicked-looking swimmers are getting out of the water. As of a few months ago, the library was in the midst of renovation plans. That was happening in July of 2018, and the mural was expected to get a more prominent place once the construction was complete.
So there was an update to that article, which ran just last month, which was September of 2018. It has been decided that that mural is now relocated to the newly renovated and renamed. It's called McKinnon's Lounge. It's on the first floor of Paterno Library at Penn State's University Park campus. So since we have just passed the 30th anniversary of his death, they were putting it there as part of that celebration. So I don't know the policies of that campus and if the public can go visit, but if you can and you're nearby, I highly encourage it. It's a really beautiful piece. It's huge. It's 14 feet long. It's 4 feet high. It It is not a small piece of art at all. And now it is in a location where you can actually view it from an appropriate vantage point for a piece of art that large. So that is Charles Adams, who I clearly adore. And wish that I could travel back in time to hang out with. Isn't that like fun?
Do you also have listener mail?
I do. We've gotten a number of postcards from our listener Alice traveling around the world. I will read one that she sent us from Vietnam. This was back in August, so I'm, like I said, still catching up with our postcards always. I try to keep them aside and read them when I can. Sometimes it takes a little while. She says, this postcard is coming to you from the Saigon Central Post Office, which was constructed in the late 19th century and often erroneously credited to Eiffel, or Alfred Falhu, the actual designer. Every nook and cranny of Ho Chi Minh City, Saigon has so much history and rich culture behind it. Yesterday, I walked by an unassuming building whose rooftop was featured in Hugh Van E's iconic Fall of Saigon photo. As I am physically traveling alone, you two are keeping me company as I go on a museum, food, and coffee tour / binge around the city. Thanks for the wonderful work you do. Alice seems like she is having, or had, I presume the tour is over, the most amazing trip imaginable. I feel like she should plan trips for other people. Because, like I said, we have assorted postcards, and she went fantastic and amazing places. So, Alice, my hat is off to you. And thank you for sharing your travels with us. I'm glad we kind of got to go with you.
Yeah.
If you would like to write to us, you can do so at historypodcast@howstuffworks.com. We are also across the spectrum of social media as Missed in History, and missedinhistory.com is our website. You can check out every episode that's ever happened. There's some notes on the ones that Tracy and I have worked on together, and occasionally we will also post other things. Like that's where you can find out where all of our live shows are coming up. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever it is you get your podcast.
For more on this and thousands of other topics, visit howstuffworks.com.
Hey listeners, I wanted to tell you about a new podcast called Happy Face from How Stuff Works. It is about 1995, the year that Melissa Moore learned that her father, Keith Hunter Jesperson, was a serial killer. And this set her on a spiral of self-doubt where she wondered, she looks like her father, she's intelligent like him, she's charismatic like him, and she worries, like, how is she going to know that she's not also a psychopath? But it's not just her talking. You're going to hear from seasoned reporters and detectives and people involved in the case, and it is a stunning tale filled with emotional, brutal twists and turns. Tune in every Friday for new episodes of Happy Face, available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Episode is all about an alleged haunting that took place in Amherst, Nova Scotia in the 1870s. So, Canadian haunting. And as we've done in haunting stories in the past, we're first going to tell it more or less as it is relayed from a believer's point of view, and then we're going to discuss it from a more skeptical side. So, eyewitness to this haunting, Walter Hubble, and we're going to get into his involvement in the story later. Wrote a book.
Sawbones is a show about medical history, and nothing the hosts say should be taken as medical advice or opinion.
Gotta go. Aw, Dunk. All right. Well, I know what I have to do. And then I die. Wow, charming. Hey, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to Paul and our whole family for dying. And listen, we've got a book coming out on October 9th called The Sawbones Book. If you have not pre-ordered it, I beg of you, please, bit.ly/The Sawbones Book. Please pre-order it. It really would mean the world to us. Thanks to taxpayers for use of Song Medicines as the intro and outro of our program. And that's going to do it for us today, right? Yeah.
Come into the light with me. Justin.
I'm coming, Dad Paul, I'm coming.
Welcome.
Justin, get next week for someone, but it's Justin McElroy.
I'm Sydney
That's
McElroy.
always still drill a hole in your head. See ya.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned.
Listener support.
All right. Talking about books. 1, 2, 1, 2,
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sawbones, where else we're misguided medicine. I'm your Justin McElroy.
And I'm Sydney McElroy. Are you going to do that voice every week now?
Have I had a streak of it going?
You have.
Okay, I won't anymore. I'm just excited to be alive. Excited to be me, excited to be alive. Excited to next week go to Portland and Seattle.
Me too.
The PNW, as everyone there refers to it, the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I am aware of the Pacific Northwest, but I've never heard P&W.
You think they already got their Halloween decorations up?
Why? Why would? Do you think Halloween hits the West Coast first?
I just thought it's spread up right here. I don't know if they get deeper into it. It's gonna be a little cooler there, which I'm kind of looking forward to.
So of course.
I'm kind of thinking that maybe, maybe they'll have some Halloween decorations.
You think that because you think it's kind of a spooky part of the country.
So
and it's like Twin Peaks is from that area, and obviously Twilight.
And Erie, Indiana.
No. That's Indiana.
We were talking about Seattle, and how did we get there? So we're at Seattle, and then we were thinking about, we like to do locally themed shows, which we're not going to do this time for reasons that we know. And we're talking about Seattle, we're talking about Grey's Anatomy. Is there something there? The Grey's Anatomy?
Right. So Grey's Anatomy is the TV show.
Right.
Which takes its name from Grey's Anatomy, the book. Which the Grey is spelled different.
I feel like
curious.
I am, so I'm very curious. I feel like I'm not to impugn the quality of the show. I've never watched it really. I feel like every time I see that show still on, I'm like, wow, that show is still on, huh?
I watched it for a while, and then I kind of lost interest because for me the medicine was the more interesting part of all those medical shows. And
right. When
you spend so much time on romantic drama, just not my thing.
It has, that show has been on for 14 seasons. 317 episodes. Are you kidding me?
I also find those shows way more interesting when they're in residency and stuff. And once they're attending, I don't know. Less intriguing. But I say that as a boring attending myself.
So where did this get us?
So anyway, I started looking into the history of the book Grey's Anatomy.
The book the show is based on.
Yes.
I mean, based on the title only, let me say. not based on that. And then it started to get me thinking about like the history of anatomical drawings, like of medical illustrations, the artwork of drawing bodies, I guess. Okay. Because that was an important skill that was developed over time that kind of evolved alongside art in order for us to study and understand the human body. Right? I mean, how else do you communicate what's inside a body unless you have like pictures of it?
We don't have photos, for sure.
Well, no, not in ancient history. You're right.
I'm making the point that we had to start with like probably cave drawings and stuff. Like, this is the butt. In case you see one of these between the legs and the stomach, here's what you're working with. It's the butt. Why does it have a hole? Why does it have a crack? We don't know. We plan to write some good jokes about it in the next few millennia, but we're still in the dark on butts.
Well, we never called butts.
Good. Look at Jerry has positioned himself on a rock. He calls it sitting. Is this the purpose of butts? We do not know.
So we've done a whole episode.
Sitting may be the devil. Might be cursed. He might be cursed because Jerry said his legs started to tingle with magic after he sat. He did past tense. Oh, by the way, he invented past tense too, and invented the past tense of sitting, which is sat. The Jared. What did I say?
His legs are tingling, so obviously, let's try some bloodletting.
Let's let some of the blood out and see what blood for sitting.
Seems like the first treatment. Okay, so we've talked about the history of dissection, and I'm going to go into that just a little. We've done a whole episode about it, so I don't want to belabor the point. But obviously, before we could draw pictures of the inside of the human body, we had to see it. The word anatomy, by the way, dates back to the ancient Greek for cutting up or taking apart. So anatomy, while it describes, is our anatomy, we're talking about the thing that is our body and the stuff inside it. Cutting it up or taking apart, looking at it is intrinsic to the word itself. Hippocrates was not big on dissection. It just wasn't really done back at that time. The idea of cutting into the human body was, first of all, kind of taboo. And secondly, it was thought to be dangerous. Even before the concept of what an infection was, the idea of a dead body was, again, and I'm using the word infected, they would not have used that exact word because they didn't know about germs yet, right? But there was something contaminated about the body, and to cut into it would contaminate you as well. So you wouldn't have been doing a lot of dissections back in that time, but he did make a lot of observations about external parts and accidentally viewed internal parts through wounds and things like that. But he didn't do drawings, at least that I could find anywhere, based on that. And the other thing, too, as I started to think about, like, but why wasn't anybody drawing anything? Well, also, it would be unlikely that some of that stuff would exist still. I mean, it's not as easy to copy as text.
Sure.
So, and that's part of this story as well. The first dissection was probably done by Herophilus in Alexandria in the 3rd century BCE with the help of his assistant Erostratus.
I'm assuming this is a post-mortem.
Yes.
To use a fancy term.
Yes.
Yeah. The doctors do.
I guess autopsy, if you will, but dissection as well. I mean, I think you could use those words at this time interchangeably, but it's really, you have different purposes.
Right. Yes.
When
Section's educational about
the body.
General.
Yeah.
Autopsies. Specific to worry about the victim.
Right.
Of the term, as they say. Now again,
Or
not
just,
within a
or
crime.
well, it doesn't have to be a crime. Like, just cause of
Most of
death.
the ones I've seen on TV are crime.
Well, sure, the ones you've seen on TV. You know those are also fake, right?
What do you got next?
Except for one time, but we'll get into that.
Whoa.
He was celebrated by the scientific community for doing this dissection, and he was given the title of the Father of Anatomy because he was the first one to be like, hey.
I'll put that to God, but okay. God the Holy Father. God of Abraham.
That's your opinion. Okay, that's your everybody sees that differently. From his descriptions, we got a better understanding of things like veins and arteries. He described reproductive organs. He described the pancreas. He wrote a lot about the process of childbirth. However, it was later reported that he performed like 600 vivisections, so some of them like partial dissections, on prisoners, maybe some while they were still alive.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
So I don't think there were as many rules at that time.
If any.
About humane treatment of people, even if they were prisoners or even if they were sentenced to death. I think that, and you'll see this kind of...
This dude's gonna beat me anyway.
Well, you see this theme where it's like, well, they've been sentenced to death, so we may as well. And that's
like,
not...
that's wild. I wish I'd been there, because I'd been like, my dude, we're all sentenced to death. Like, can we not, please?
At the school there in Alexandria, you see some of the first anatomical drawings that were created based on these dissections. So he created this culture that you could dissect a human body. That after, hopefully after, but maybe sometimes before someone had died, it was acceptable to open up their body and take a look to try to learn more about the human body with the goal that we could take this information and do something helpful with it someday, right? But you couldn't easily reproduce any of these drawings. You would have had to draw them again if you wanted to, put them in a book and give them to somebody. Sure. So obviously that was a whole other.
The problem with all knowledge, exchange of knowledge at this point, right? Like,
right.
You lose the original. That's it.
Yeah, because you got to write it again because we don't have printing press. But, yeah.
Spoilers. Sheesh.
I think everybody knows that in the 3rd century BC we didn't have the printing press.
Now I see you're spoiling the printing press is going to be invented. I imagine that being a big milestone for us. Some people may not know. They don't want to ruin it for everybody. Like, some people may not.
Some people might not know.
Some people may not know. Like, so there might be some people who are like, how are they going to solve this?
That was one of those things that I feel like they taught me in history class, though, and I remember thinking, why do I need to know that this happened? I mean, like, obviously I'm aware. Now we have computers, so it doesn't matter. But,
yeah, that's weird. Okay.
I mean, like, didn't everybody learn that? And then the printing press.
Yeah, but, like, you should know. I'm not going to. You're turning into a real Justin on this, and I need you to keep moving.
Okay. So this put an end to dissections for a while because of some of the issues surrounding possible live dissection of human beings, and then there were some that created even more cultural taboos around the processes of anatomical dissection, and so it wasn't done for a while after that. Galen, who we trust a lot of his medical writings and drawing descriptions of the human body and things, was basically using all of his predecessors' stuff to create all of that. He wasn't doing these dissections himself. He was basing it on what other people had said and drawn and described. He was looking at wounds of gladiators. A lot of what he derived about the human body was just from looking at open wounds from gladiators. Some of it was...
Nasty, though. I gotta give it up.
Yeah. A way to get a peek info.
Here. That's like the extreme version of the post sports game interviews. Like, hey champ, come on over if you could, just 1 second. Yeah, if I could just bother you for 1 second. How you feeling about that? I just wanna, if I could just duck my head inside this spear wound.
Is that a lion? Did a lion do that?
We all really gave it our all, and
so he would also dissect monkeys, and there was a lot of assumption made that any primate anatomy would do, kind of describing human anatomy.
What is it called when your signature is on snowden?
Okay, a notary. You need a notary?
No, I got a notarized copy. I sent a notarized copy of the trust certificate back up to RB4C.
Oh, okay.
I just couldn't think of the word notary.
Okay. All right.
I was trying to send Gail an email that says that I sent it with Mark.
Okay.
mean, starting from the point we were starting at, it's not completely wrong, right?
He definitely got stuff wrong. And this was a big, I don't say this was a big problem like I'm hating on Galen, but the reason this became such a big problem is because he was considered the authority. So as time goes on and actual dissections start to take place again, and you're holding up these images of what we find in actual human bodies versus these images that Galen created based on word of mouth and monkeys, people would actually say, well, I guess it's just that this body is wrong, because it couldn't be that Galen was wrong. You would look at the evidence before your eyes and still say, well, the cadaver must be wrong. It's got to be, Galen couldn't have been wrong.
That's humans for you.
It wasn't until the Middle Ages that dissections really started up again, and then you see more drawings produced from that. There were some figures that were doing public dissections at this time, which obviously would help with spreading this information as well. And furthering the study, the first one was like Mondino de Luzzi at the University of Bologna did the first live dissection that people could watch. And this, again, these things are important because then you can study anatomy. It makes it okay to some extent, or at least you can justify it. Well, that other guy did it. Most of the anatomical drawings of this period, the Middle Ages, are kind of simple, almost like crude drawings. If you look at these, and we should post some of these to our Facebook page so people can kind of see what I'm talking about. They largely exist to just show like a spatial relationship between really major organs and structures. So like here's a crude outline, like a 2D flat outline of a human body, and like something that represents a heart, and something that represents a lung, and here's some intestine, that kind of thing. Very crude looking drawings for the most part. They're usually pretty humanoid, but sometimes the proportions of the human body are very odd when they're rendered. And again, these are rendered from life, so it's not like you're guessing. The Wound Man, do you remember the Wound Man from the episode where we have the guy with all the with all the like spears and knives and things sticking out of him? Yeah. Remember that guy? That's
the worst superhero ever.
That's kind of a good example of art, like anatomical art from this time. Like here's this guy who's just kind of standing there awkwardly, and he's got a bunch of like wounds and implements hanging out of his body. This was an anatomical drawing, I guess. There were some really awkward, I found like some squatting figures that just had like a heart and some blood vessels that vaguely represented the tracts of Blair, but nothing was definite. It wasn't like this blood vessel or that one. It was just like here's some random lines, some red lines, and some blue lines. There you go.
Okay.
Giacomo Berengario de Carpi was a famous.
The artwork that's in that box in the garage, it's not just frames, but it's a couple of my mother's pictures and.
Oh, I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
You want me to come out and look at it?
Yeah, give me a sec.
Okay.
Let me put my look.
doctor and anatomist from the 1400s who actually dissected and illustrated the text. He had made a name for himself pretending to treat syphilis with mercury. He wasn't very successful, but he did make a lot of money and became kind of famous. That's so, as was the fashion. And then he spent a lot of time on this text called Anatomia Carpi. And these drawings are still somewhat simple in a lot of cases, but there's some actual organs depicted. There's some actual close-up on, like, here is an actual organ, and, like, I'm trying to draw the structure of it, not just some vague blob. Like, this is what it might look like. The human figures are really interesting, and you'll see this repeated for quite a while. And this is probably something people have looked at through art, like in if you've ever stumbled across these drawings and never really considered. The figures are, one, they're very idealized. They look like perfect. They're like godly specimens of humanity. And I don't just mean like from a physical ideal, whatever you consider physical quote unquote ideal to be. I mean like they look saintly. They might have like beams of light radiating from their body. There are a lot of like naked men, like muscular men, like posing with like beams of light around them, and their hands are triumphantly outstretched as they open up their like skin to reveal their perfect pectorals and their perfect abdominal muscles. Yeah.
Well, you might as well have them.
And they look, and they're alive. Like they're pictures of live people like revealing their organs.
Like Slim Goodbye.
Yes, exactly. It's Slim Goodbye now. But some of the skeletons, because there are skeleton drawings too, but they're like frozen in like dance-like poses. They look very nice. They're like, oh, look at this. Look at my bones. There's some people who are just standing there like carelessly, like leaning on an axe and pointing with like part of their like they're all naked, but then like sometimes you're seeing underneath as well, like the musculature or whatever. There are a lot of female figures that are depicted as like draped dramatically over chairs, like I almost imagine they're not on fainting couches, but that was like the thing that reminded me. Like they're like draped, and they always like, and this is in all the figures, like somewhere their skin is just kind of to reveal what's as if that has just naturally happened. Some of them are like dancing with scarves, and then their abdominal cavity happens to be open.
I didn't realize it's not the body a touchstone that the people of today are familiar with, because that might have seemed like a weird thing for me to say. The body, was he like, is he
I think
relevant, or is that just
no, I don't think he's still relevant, but I think there are probably people our age who remember the characters from Goodbye.
Unless he's listening, in which case you are still relevant as your Goodbye. And wow, can I say, what an honor it is to just look. SlimGoodBody.com. He's still doing it. He's still doing it. He's out there. He's always trying. Okay, sorry. You made it up again.
This is the same era as Da Vinci, by the way, and I think you could see some of this echoed in his human figures. You know, the anatomical drawings that Da Vinci did, which are these beautiful depictions of the human form. Also trying to be exact and show what is what, right? Like what's underneath all the bumps. That's what artists want to know sometimes. What's underneath all those bumps so I can draw them better. But so that, but also they're very beautiful as well. Versalius comes along at this point, and this was for a long time. This was kind of like the basis of a lot of anatomical knowledge. It was 1543. Andreas Versalius publishes De Humani Corporis Fabrica Libri Septem, which means on the fabric of the human body in 7 books. So a lot of stuff about the human body. He did dissections. He employed a lot of different artists to render what he was seeing so that he could actually have somebody who was very talented draw the stuff. He did the dissection, and then people watched it. And
so smarter. Like, what are the odds you're going to be like a good dissector and a good drawer, too? It seems low.
That's actually true. You'll find that a lot. The cover showed Versalius. This is really cool. So one of Versalius's goals was to contradict Galen. Like, maybe even to go picture for picture to tell everybody, like, look, Galen was not right about everything. I'm going to show you exactly why. So the cover of this tome is Versalius doing a dissection on a convicted criminal who I think is still alive. Like, they've been sentenced to death. And there are all these people around him watching him. And there's like a skeleton hovering over, I guess to creep everybody out or like remind everyone of the specter of death. And then there's Galen in one corner watching and Aristotle in the other corner watching him as he does this dissection. So Versilius, I think, maybe thought a lot of himself. So at this point, you have a lot of artistic advances. So like rendering and perspective. Perspective is a big deal if you think about it. The idea of perspective in art, and that becomes a thing that really influenced the way that we could see a human body and understand proportions a lot better. And then you also start to see the use of woodcuts to reprint the images. So that made this book really special because you could, can you imagine the detail that would take to do a woodcut of like the vasculature or something and then reprint that? Yeah, so you have these very beautiful detailed drawings, and then on the woodcut, and then reprinted. And he challenged a lot of Galen's false beliefs. There's still, by the way, 700 copies of this book that you can find. There is one in Brown University's John Hay Library, which is bound in human skin.
Fun.
I think we've talked about that before.
We did, because they have some at the Mutter. They have some human skin books.
Yep. So there is one of those. The anatomical art that followed of the 17th and 18th century was just, it kind of was expanding on this, more lifelike details, obviously perspective and everything. They also would add things like sometimes like a sheet draped over a body or like a fly on the body to make it really like,
super spooky.
Yeah. Like, look, this was really real.
Provided for scale.
You could also use copper plates to start. They started using some copper plates to like reprint the images. You also saw like the rise of the anatomical museum at this point, with like you could walk into a spooky room with a bunch of shelves with organs and jars and things like that. The ones of the early 1800s have sometimes done away with like the backgrounds, because like all these drawings that I'm talking about, you could look at them, they all have like rolling hills and trees and stuff behind these figures. So they start to do away with that, because like, why do you need that? Right? There's like a body, you don't need that. But they were still these idealized human figures. They weren't really necessarily easy to follow. A lot of it was just blocks of text next to a picture, and they would describe everything next to the picture, but like labels weren't necessarily used.
Interesting.
So obviously we've made a lot of progress, but we're not where we need to be yet.
Right. How do we get there?
Well, I'm going to tell you that, Justin, but first let's go to the billing department.
Let's go. Ultra first one is Blue Apron. You know it. We love it. You probably love it too if you've tried it. Just delicious meals that you can make at home. Designed by a chef, fresh, and you can cook them in as little as 20 minutes.
I made a delicious Blue Apron last night.
Last night was so good. It was Asiago smothered chicken with smoky corn and cucumber or zucchini.
It was zucchini.
You can't tell the difference. I can't. I literally can't tell the difference. I don't get a lot of interaction with them, so I appreciate that.
You sliced it.
I didn't slice it, but I would have sliced a zucchini and a cuke exactly the same way.
How often are you slicing up a cucumber and baking it in the oven with garlic on it?
I can't remember which one is which.
Okay.
Fine. This is delicious. We've had so many delicious meals, and you could get started cooking right now. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free at blueapron.com/sawbones. That's blueapron.com/sawbones. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. Guess what kind of underwear I'm wearing today?
MeUndies.
Correct. Guess what kind I'll be wearing tomorrow?
Again, MeUndies. I folded your underwear yesterday, so I know exactly what you got going on.
They're all MeUndies. Folks, and it is a fun way to start the day. Let me tell you about these micromodal fabrics. It's fun. These are fun prints, and I was reminded of that because we had to go in and choose. It doesn't matter, but I was looking through the MeUndies store a couple of days ago. So many great cuts, exactly kind of whatever cut you want. You have boxers, briefs, tighter boxers, shorter boxers, short boxer briefs. They got them all. And all these great prints.
You got new Star Wars.
I got new Star Wars ones. They're so cool. And MeUndies just launched a brand new membership. You can level up your top drawer each month. Switch styles or skip any month you want. It's up to you. Just you can get 15% off your first pair, free shipping, and a 100% satisfaction guarantee if you go to MeUndies.com/Sawbones. That's MeUndies.com/Sawbones. Now, Sid, I think we're about to finally make a little progress here.
Well, and to be fair, Justin, we have made progress. We definitely
more progress.
If you look from like old texts where there are no pictures to like the realization we need some pictures, and here's some like crude human figures with some big organs inside, to like some beautiful but disturbing images of live humans dancing around with their organs popping out across the beautiful Greek countryside or whatever. and then finally we have like some actual anatomical drawings and figures. This brings us to Grey's Anatomy, not the TV show. No, the one with the A. Grey.
Got it.
Right. So
we won't be talking much about the show.
As much as we've already talked about it. So I had always assumed that Grey's Anatomy was completely made by whoever Grey was.
You got his name right on there. Henry Grey, right?
Yes, Henry Grey.
I don't know why I knew that. That's weird. I didn't look at the notes. I know it seems like I would have looked at the notes. I didn't.
I've talked about it.
Listen. Wow.
Right.
Cool.
So,
good husband.
Henry Grey, Dr. Henry Grey, was a young and anatomist at St. George's. He was kind of a well-to-do, upper-class guy. He had a lot of financial support. He had a lot of charisma. He was well-liked. He was determined. He was out to make a name for himself and do whatever it took to be something memorable, leave a legacy, right? And he dressed really well, and people liked him. And it's important that you kind of get who this guy is. He had recently become a fellow of the Royal Society, which was a big deal. It was not necessarily something that everybody could be. And he had presented papers and things in front of his fellows. And,
love that.
And was very well respected. And he did have a lot of skill as an anatomist. I don't mean to insinuate that he wasn't talented, but he was talented and he knew it. How about that?
I got weak.
He had been lauded recently for an excellent treatise on the spleen. There was something called the Astley Cooper Prize, which was awarded every year to one of the I don't even necessarily think you have to be a fellow, which is one of the